One, two, three, four.
You are listening to SKYLIT, the SKYLIT Books podcast. SKYLIT Books is a general interest bookstore in the Los Feliz neighborhood in Los Angeles. You can shop with us from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or visit us online 24/7 at skylitbooks.com. Follow along at SKYLIT Books Instagram and Twitter. You can subscribe to the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Thank you for listening, and now on to the episode.
Hello, my beautiful and lovely listeners, and welcome to SKYLIT. This is the SKYLIT Books podcast, and I'm your host, Lance Morgan. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Jake Jabbour to read from his new book, Training to Be Myself, an indulgent odyssey of obsessions, confessions, and curiosities, followed by a conversation with me. But before I introduce him, I want to remind you that SKYLIT Books is now open for in-store browsing, but just follow the CDC mandate and bring your masks and just be respectful of both the customers and the employees working there. But we really will be excited to see you come back. You can always shop online as well, 24/7 at www.skylitbooks.com, where you can do curbside pickup, shipping, all the fun stuff. Jake Jabbour is a former TFA special education teacher, current UCB writer, and performer, and founded We Improv. He co-created We're Gross with Gilly and the Meet Improv. He lives in Los Angeles. Jake, I'm so excited to have you on right now.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. This is so exciting.
This is going to be so much fun. You have a reading for us today?
Yeah. This is just a brief. Should I give a little intro maybe?
Yeah, give a little intro. Let our listeners let our listeners know what we have in store for us.
Okay, great. Well, the book is about a 2-week train tour I took across the country for an improv podcast I did. But leading up to that, I had some significant events that sort of kind of determined how I'd be spending the trip. So this is just a brief section on attending my grandpa's funeral. So it deals with death, but it's not too morbid.
What an intro. What a great intro. It was great. I'm like leaning in. I'm like, all right,
okay.
Well,
that's great. All right, here we go. The funeral. My grandpa passed away in October 2016, but my family opted to have the funeral in June because so many of us are teachers, and that's when summer break is. I hate this choice. I feel like I'm putting my grief on hold, but grief doesn't hold well. It doesn't sit patiently for its turn. It's in the waiting room, pestering the other feelings, happiness, curiosity, love, and it's screaming while everyone's trying to get work done, and it smells like booze. Instead of attending to my grief, I just pick at it, knowing I'm going to have to tear open the wound again in 8 months, but I'm contributing almost nothing to the planning, so I bite my tongue. I've been labeled repeatedly by both sides of my family as sensitive, emotional, and overthinking. I'm the youngest member of my family on both sides, or at least I was for the better part of 10 years. Then my sister had kids, but they somehow were always kids while I remained the frozen baby. Reasons for this include, but are not limited to, my crying at a Little League game, throwing a fit over no one coming to my college graduation, and crying after a haircut at the tender age of 15. My dad has said in print that he's thankful there was never a draft for my generation, as I am too sensitive and would not have survived war. All of this is to say that my family doesn't really consult with me because I have a history of being an emotional bummer, except for my mom. My mom always considers me, even when she undoubtedly loses points with the rest of the family. This makes me a mama's boy who loves his mommy very much, and his grandpa. When I was a kid, my grandpa and I would walk on the beach, and we would walk backwards. So if someone were following us, it would look like we were walking in the opposite direction. It didn't make much sense, but for a kid, it was sure fun to see an adult be silly and walk backward with me. When I was growing up, we'd exchange letters. On my birthday, he'd send a card that would say, "Here's a few bucks to live a little." And a few always meant $50. I'd write him detailed accounts of my adventures through elementary, middle, and high school. I can't imagine how self-indulgent and pointless those letters must have been. Much later, my mom said she visited him once and she saw that he had filled all my letters away and had highlighted and underlined all the important details. When I went to college, he got an email address and we would keep in touch about our living situations. For me, the dorms. For him, a new house he bought with his new wife, who he met on eHarmony. He was encouraging, even when I didn't know what I wanted to do. And he was vulnerable when, alone again, he had to move into a retirement community. We were both going through transitions, and I like to think the comfort I felt was mutual. When I was 20, my dad and I stayed at his place for 2 weeks one summer because we were helping my mom, who lived nearby, build a pantry in her house. For 2 weeks, every morning, my 85-year-old grandpa would get up early and pack us sack lunches with sandwiches, fruit, and mini candy bars. When I moved to San Diego, he was 87 and only 30 miles away. So we started going out to lunch on Sundays as often as every week. He still drove, but didn't like to. So I'd park my car at his place and drive him and his girlfriend around in his. 9 years later, and after moving from San Diego to Los Angeles, 100 miles farther away, I don't think a month went by where I didn't see him at least once for lunch. I could always count on consistent uniqueness from him. He'd sing to the server or hostess, or in the elevator to his girlfriend. When one of his children or grandchildren would come for an overnight visit or vacation, there would be slippers and robes with our initials either ironed on in felt or written with permanent marker. For most of the time that I knew him, he lived alone, but his house was stocked for family. Coloring books for the youngest, Bill O'Reilly for the oldest, and boogie boards and Oreos for everyone. He'd routinely make efforts to bring his family closer together, often sending his 2 sons and his grandson the same Hawaiian shirt or leather vest. His taste was not always impeccable, and insisting we get together to take a picture in them. For Christmas, he would send a package addressed to the Jabbours, and in it would contain a multitude of presents with no names on them and an envelope with a handwritten letter and a stack of $1 bills. This was the guessing game. We'd each get a chance to guess what each present was, and if you guessed correctly, you'd get $3. And until I was about 11, I'd get 2 guesses, as I was the youngest. He'd ask me if I was happy with work and if I had any ladies in my life, and he'd pick up the check. I'd thank him for lunch, and he'd tell me it was his pleasure, and that I didn't know how much my visits meant to him. If I'm honest, I started visiting him because I felt it was something I should do. But now it's clear it was something I needed. Aside from my roommate and a couple other people, he was the person I grew closest to during my time in California. For 23 years of my life, he was my grandpa. For the last 9, he was my friend. But perhaps that's not even accurate, because I've never had a friend who, in exchange for clearing out his inbox, would take me out to lunch at Islands because of their excellent bottomless fries, in his words. When I moved into my own apartment for the first time in my life and needed a deposit but hadn't got a paycheck from my new job yet, he sent me a check and wrote, "You are ace in the hole." That's more than friendly. That's paternal. But he was more than a parent. He used to get mad at me for not saying sir or for tucking my hands in my sleeves. All of that fell away the more we hung out. He'd ask for dating advice and give his own, telling me I should always send a card. Our time together never felt he focused or me focused. It was us focused. He would inject little sayings into every outing. Some I'd heard elsewhere. You've got champagne taste on a beer budget. But others were Nick originals. Once, when we walked down the hall of his retired living apartment complex, he said, "Welcome to the hardware store. Screws on the left, nuts on the right." Or when something surprised or delighted him, Nina Ross, the kickin' hoss with the golden hooves. To this day, none of us, his family, nor Google search could provide any insight into who Nina was or if she was a woman or a horse. He would sing to hostesses, steal cookies from the dining hall, and always gift a crisp $50 bill to help with gas. He was always so aware of the people around him, so conscious of his impression on them, and as he got older, so determined to ensure that that impression was a positive one. For 9 years, I saw him weekly, roughly 450 times more than I saw anyone. And so it's impossible not to see my immigration to the West Coast as equal parts adulthood exploration and a study in aging and generosity. I have anxiety over this funeral. It feels like I'm in middle school English, and the teacher said, "Jake, stay after class." Except class has been 8 months. My stomach is turning and I can't be present because I know something dreadful is waiting for me. How can I possibly enjoy now when later will be worse? That's the rub with death. It's coming later and is usually a straight up bummer. The funeral is today, but my recording of it will be sparse. And as a result, the recounting of it will also be light. You're getting the stuff I felt emotionally present for, or the stuff that hit so hard it left an imprint. The ordinary and the overwhelming. I'm sitting in the La Quinta Inn in Riverside while M, my girlfriend, showers. She is here with me, and I am grateful for her company. Aside from her love, she is providing a comforting constant that I can tether myself to as the winds of loss thrash me about. I meet my dad in the lobby, and we talk about Homeland. My adult relationship with my dad consists mostly of talking about what TV shows we both like. Not shows he likes and shows I like, but shows we both like. There's not a lot of room for listening to one another. It's mostly him talking to me about a show I like that he's watching. It's like show and tell, except it's eternally his turn. And we brought the same thing. We could also talk about my grandpa and his dad being dead, but we don't. Aside from a visit here to a friend almost 12 years ago, I probably haven't been to Riverside since my grandmother's funeral, and I certainly haven't been back to the cemetery since. I left the Air Force Cemetery in Riverside over 20 years ago, probably not thinking about whether I would be back. Even though my grandmother is buried here, I'm not sure it ever occurred to me to visit her. I'm not sure how often my grandpa did, but I sit in this hotel room wondering if I'll ever be at the La Quinta again. I may not. I will probably be here in Riverside again because I would like to visit my grandpa. That's the thing I'm thinking about most. As I try to project out to my last days, looking back on the life I lived, my memories and time with my grandpa will have to share more and more space with new experiences and memories and relationships. And I hope that the space for him is always protected. I read cards he sent me 10 years ago, and he wrote me much more as a grandparent fulfilling his role, saying things like, "It's been nice to get to know you," and "I enjoy your visits." And then when I look on more recent letters or think of things he said during our weekly lunches, he really saw me as someone close to him, obviously as a grandson, but equally a friend. A companion of sorts to usher him into his final years with some positivity. It has to be so hard to get old, to lose loved ones, to be left to wander, to be idle, to miss and to love. I see now we probably made it easier on each other with my transition to California and his to old age. We were both on our own in ways we didn't quite plan for, and we were there to make sure we had love and support along the way. Was that good?
That was good. I love that you gave this like heartfelt, emotional, like I was like in, and then afterwards you ask, was that good? No,
I just wanted to make sure I didn't read too much or too little. Or
no, you read the perfect amount. That was great. That was fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure our listeners right now are like, what? Like, why would he ask that? That was fantastic. That was great. No, thank you for reading that.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for giving me the space.
I feel like you like shook me a little bit where I'm like, oh my God, I have to follow after that. Oh no. I'm like gonna sign off now and be like, you know what, you take this away. I'm good. I don't want this now.
No, please stay.
No, well, the first thing I want to talk about, I know I did like an introduction for you, but I feel like it didn't encompass like, you know, a lot of what you've done. So could you give us a little, you know, recap on just like who you were in 2016 when all this stuff was happening, but what was happening and like how you got there?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Colorado and I went to Colorado State, and after that I was waiting tables in a college town and just having a great time, and some of my friends worked at the restaurant and were 5 or 6 years older than me, and they had also gone to Colorado State and hung around, and I could see how fast time would sort of get away from me if I stayed in Fort Collins. So I wanted to move and try something that felt that it mattered that I did it. And that's not to say that, like, I mean, waiting tables matters. It matters a ton. But me bringing out the pizza versus someone else bringing out the pizza, you kind of get the same pizza. And so what
a great, you know, I feel like that's, you're saying things that I'm like, wow, let me write this down. Let me get my notebook and write that down.
Yeah, we can all bring out a pizza. And so I wanted to do something that felt like it was it mattered that it was me specifically doing it. And I had family in San Diego. And so I moved out there and got a job working for AmeriCorps with youth on probation. And I did that. And that's how I got closer to my grandpa. And then I discovered through a friend long form improv in Los Angeles at the UCB Theater. So I was like, I got to get to Los Angeles. And that took a little while. But once I got to Los Angeles, I applied for Teach for America and did that program. So I taught special education. That's a 2-year program in Los Angeles, while also I was improvising and sort of, making that kind of my life, teaching during the day and trying to do comedy at night and visiting my grandpa in the evenings. And I continued to teach, and I got a girlfriend, and I found a roommate through improv, and we lived together for 8 years. And then in 2016, my roommate moved out. So that was like a shift in basically what I'd come to know as like my Los Angeles home life. And then my grandpa passed away. And then my girlfriend and I came to the end of our relationship. We sort of actually planned out the end of it, the breakup. It was very mutual. We just, and this is all in the book, but we just felt differently about having kids. It's something that I didn't see myself doing, and something that she really wanted. And so through couples counseling, we found kind of it sounds weird, but like an exit plan. And so, and then I was doing an improv podcast, and we had made this plan to sort of take a trip across the country and stop in cities and do improv. And we were going to do it by Amtrak train. And so the end of my living situation and my grandpa passing away and the breakup all preceded that trip. So I found myself in Los Angeles at one point feeling like, oh, a roommate and a boyfriend and a grandson. And then within 6 to 8 months or whatever, all three of those relationships had sort of dissolved, and I was going across the country. So I had kind of used that. I figured it was, I basically didn't really know. I mean, I think everybody's trying to figure out who they are at different points in their life, but I had felt so defined by my relationships, and they had ended. And so I wanted to kind of figure that out. And I figured being on the train, and I think America sort of romances train traveling and writing. And it sort of made sense to write this stuff down as it happened, and with the goal of like coming out of it with a book to see if I could do it.
I mean, I feel like there's a sequel book from the perspective of the people you traveled with, like being like what it was like traveling with this guy who was, going through this, I would say devastating time of his life. And what was that like from their perspective? I feel, I feel like I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to have a separate podcast with those guys.
Good. They'd probably appreciate, they'd appreciate an opportunity to.
I feel like it'll be great. You won't be a part of this book, but like it'll be
totally fine.
About you. Yeah. Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah. I shot my shot. So they're free to.
They're free to go. Perfect.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, I feel like for those three things happening, like, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's just like, did it hit all of this? Was it like something that hit all the same for you, or did it hit in waves? Was it like something you were just like, this bigger thing? Was it like that?
Yes. It was, it did hit in waves in a way that was sort of like, I'm somebody, and I think other people may have this thing where it's like, we use our support systems or whatever to deal with the loss of our support systems. Like that's kind of, and so this kind of came about in a way where it was like, well, a roommate moving out is like all of this stuff is actually like pretty typical life events, but it's like, well, my roommate moves out. Well, I can talk to my girlfriend about that, finding a new roommate, things like that. Or talk to my grandpa about it. And then it's like, well, my grandpa passed away, and well, now my roommate's not here to talk to about that, right? And
Right.
and then my girlfriend and I sort of finding an end to our relationship was like, oh, well, my grandpa's not here to talk to that about. So it hit in waves in a way that also, I mean, it sometimes it's like, oh, how did you plan to write this book, or what? And I don't think until you sort of ask that question, have I been able to articulate it in the way that I wrote it, because it was like I had these feelings or things that I was going through, and they were hitting me in waves in such a way that like the people I had previously talked to about it weren't available or accessible. So it was like I had to have an outlet to do that, I guess, which is why it's a very self-indulgent book. But it was like taking these events that I would normally use or normally like lean on other people for. They were all about not having people to lean on for. So that's not to say that like my parents weren't available, and my Josh, who did the podcast with me, and other friends and things, but those were the three people I was closest to. So it always kind of felt like like my books on the like nightstand weren't easily accessible. I had to reach further out to sort of like get what I needed, if that answers that.
No, I mean, it does. But also, did you feel like during that you had to learn how to like, talk to yourself about these things? Like because I feel like that's something that like is hard to do. It's not an easy process.
Yeah. And I think I maybe learned that process over the course of that trip, and then probably the writing of the book was the learning process. And I think like it's that thing where it's like, oh, well, doing that project got me better at the thing that would have made, like, I'm better at it now than when I sort of set out to do it, but for that specific reason of like, yeah, it's a lot of like talking to yourself. And I do consider myself an introvert. And so time alone is something that I cherish and like, and it restores my energy. But human connection is also so important to me.
Right.
But it's not, I am not always easy to find it. So I had to sort of, rely on talking to myself in ways that like I hadn't before, I think.
And I mean, like, even as an introvert and as a person who's experienced moments of like loss, and as an introvert, it's like, even though I love that moments with myself too, which you just said you do too, like in those times, it's like I lost that as well, because now it's like work. Now like being by myself is now work, and I hate work. I hate work, honestly. If I could never work again, that'd be. This is a shout out to anyone who could free me from this life of work.
Yeah,
find me. Please reach out.
Please freelance from that.
Free me. Hashtag freelance from work. Start the movement. No, like it's that safe space of being by yourself becomes like now this like not a safe space because these intrusive things are coming in.
Yeah, that's really well said. Sorry. Yeah.
No, but I was gonna ask, was that something that you had to like reckon with?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't think I could actually, I think you put it so well of like, oh, that time by myself that is usually used to recharge or, self-care or soothe or whatever, those kind of like ways in which we value that time. And then became times of like, oh, this time is now work time, sort of work in the set, like grief, I guess, grieving time. And grief is, I mean, I read so many books on it because it was and I found a lot of comfort in that, honestly. But because it's so hard, and it comes in waves, in ways that you like don't anticipate it coming.
Right.
And I feel like it is, at least I have not any attempt to be like, well, I'm gonna skirt this grief, or like, I think that's why it feels like work, is that like it's not something optional. It is something that you have to work through, I guess. Yeah.
No, it is something you have to work through, and like, because avoiding it is just like, it's, as my therapist would say, toxic. Or yeah. But I kind of moving on from that, one of my favorite things to read is like comedians, improv people who write stuff that are like, kind of devastating, because they really know how to like balance the line of both like, wow, I'm weeping on this one page, and the next page I'm just like crying, or not crying, sorry, laughing, crying from laughing.
Yeah.
Because like I'm just like, wow, that's hilarious. But like I feel like you do this well in your book, where it's like, oh, there's a nice balance to it, where I'm not like coming out of it like, I'm gonna go jump off this bridge, but I'm also not coming out of it like, wow, feels like a 3-hour comedy show where I like just was like mind-numbingly laughing the entire time. It's a perfect balance. How was it writing that? Was that something you found your voice, like found through writing it, or was it something that you knew that was a part of your voice already?
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's always really, I mean, yeah, it's so nice to hear the intended effect, I guess. And I think I think the balance came in that, like, we sort of spend our like, I think you have to seek out comedy in life. Like, occasionally things happen, but tragedy sort of finds you, I think. And so I felt like life experience had made me very familiar with sort of like grief and tragedy and devastation and those types of events, big and small. But comedy was something that like I always pursued and had been like paying money to get better at, right? I suppose I pay money to a therapist to get better at processing grief and things. But in terms of like finding that balance, it felt like, well, I felt sad, or I've had no choice but have those kind of like sad feelings and stuff. So that was there. And then the comedy was something that I worked hard to have experiences with and sort of sharpen as a skill set. And I think going into it, I definitely thought, well, this will be mostly just funny. Even though those events were there, I don't think it's kind of that it relies a little bit on like, well, my intention or the thing that I'm actively pursuing is comedy, or to sort of like get better at that. Not necessarily realizing that like, oh, all of us are constantly practicing how we deal with our other emotions. And so as I wrote the book, I think I found myself like kind of surprised at how much of it was more serious. Like I and people who perform comedy or pursue comedy often deflect very well using comedy. I think it's like it's can be very useful, can be a coping mechanism, but it can also be kind of like a crutch in that, like, oh, I never have to be sincere. I can always sort of like be under this veil of comedy.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, oh my God, should I be a comedian? No, I mean, I feel like it's this thing of like, and you were talking about it in your reading just now about like, being a sensitive kid and being like, it's like your heart's open, your chest is open, your heart's super vulnerable. And so comedy is kind of that protective shield where like you get to like, you get to just be, you couldn't like, if you're funny, you don't have to like feel it all, which is good. I don't think, and I feel like some people would be like, that's a negative thing to feel, but no, it's like, sometimes it's not a crutch. It's
like a
it's an
coping
armor,
mechanism,
a
or
coping
or an
mechanism.
armor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, also, I mean, it's interesting to me that like you were saying this about the book, but also at the same time you probably had to be like on all the time because you were traveling, you were performing, you were you were doing this big trip that you planned where you had to be on as a performer while dealing with all these emotions. It seems interesting to me. How was that?
It was like, it was wild. It was, and I mean, I'm really glad to continue to be self-indulgent. I am really glad that I wrote that book because I was in such a place that like I don't think I would have remembered much of what the trip was about had I not taken that time. And that's true with a lot of experiences I find for myself, but this one in particular, where it was like, you're right, we were doing this as it was by no means paying the bills, but it was kind of like a job-ish type thing. I mean, we had to show up at a place and perform, and it's comedy and I love it. But it is a little bit of like, you have booked this show to perform live comedy, and with any responsibility that people have, or it's like, all right, I've got to see to that responsibility, even though I'm going through a bunch of stuff. And like, and I do think that having that escape to go on that train, I was incredibly fortunate, because I think it would have been it was a great coping mechanism, or a great shield to sort of be like, well, I can spend the time on the train in thought, thinking about things or reading about things. But then I got to get snapped back to like, it was almost an overload of senses in a helpful way of like, whoa, I'm now in Austin, Texas. I've never been in Austin, Texas. Like, there is enough new people and sights and sounds and comedy to sort of say like, you've got to pay attention to all of this. And pulled me out of it for a little bit, to give me an opportunity to sort of like balance it out. But it does feel like, had I not written that down, I would have lost it all probably in a fog, because I think that's another coping mechanism, is like, you're not always so fully exposed and present, because that can be painful. So I was very fortunate to have the opportunity.
And to go off of that, I think this is a really good transition. Listeners, this is how we do transitions. I'm joking. No, I mean, I think to go off of that too, this book is kind of like an open wound for you. It feels like an open wound too, because this is like so much exposing yourself to this tragedy still, or this tragic, devastating time for you. I don't know how you would put it. This terrible, horrible, I'm just gonna keep saying these words until like I just bring you to tears. That's good. That's good podcasting.
Good interviewing. Yeah.
No, I mean, this time for you that was very hard. This book is that time. How does it feel now to like, even this interview, talk about this? Does it feel like it's opening up that wound still, or is it like just a nice memory?
It does a little of both. I mean, there's the sort of like, to pull back the curtain a little bit, is like, I had to edit and rewrite and revise everything. And that comes, there are so many like transitions in there where it's like, oh, the first time through it was really hard and sad, and then the second time through it was like, oh, what was I trying to say here or whatever. Like, it becomes kind of like just processing, and then the third time it's like, I could make this a little better, and each time, and then there's a time where I have some distance from it and I had to go back through and edit it and was really emotionally affected again, and like having a ton of sort of empathy for this version of myself that wrote the book, and feeling like, oh, I feel I like condolences to my former self of who was really going through something. And there are parts that feel like opening up old wounds, both emotionally and also just like, I can't believe I put that in there. Like you had so many opportunities to change it. So there is that process of it. And I can read it with a little bit of distance because it did happen, 3 years ago. And, but also, and not, I mean, like, this is self-referential and kind of gross, but like in the part I read, it's like the thing I worry about as I get older is like the sharing of space in my heart and memory of the times I spent with my grandpa or my girlfriend. And so having the book to sort of hold that for me is really nice. And I anticipate I will continue. Well, actually, I don't know how often I'll go back and read it, but I anticipate at least in my lifetime, I'll do it a couple of times and hopefully get to read it from some distance and be kind of like, as my therapist suggested I do during difficult times, is to have like a step of removal where instead of the things happening to you, you're sort of watching these things happen to someone, and you can kind of be like more kind or more thoughtful because you're observing it as opposed to just like taking it all in. And so the book will take that on, I assume. At this point, it mostly comes up if somebody reaches out and says like, my sister in particular reached out and was like, I didn't know all of this stuff. And she was like, and I'm just like, she was very touched by it. And that, I guess viewing it through someone else's eyes continues to sort of be like emotionally impactful, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. And by watching it, throughout your life, I assume you mean it's going to be adapted into an A24 film starring like, I mean, Timothy Chalamet as you probably.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
No problem. I mean, it's a good get. Congrats.
Thanks. Yeah. Unbelievable.
I mean, your grandfather be played by like, I don't know, Werner
Herzog.
Werner Herzog, yeah.
Oh, incredible!
I mean, that's another good
casting.
get. I'm thinking A24 vibes. Yeah. Ari Aster will direct it.
I love this.
Perfect. I'll get. You know what? Congratulations! It's cast coming out next fall, guys.
Incredible! Wow, that is fast tracked.
They work fast. You didn't even. That's how good they are that you didn't even know they were doing it.
No, I had no idea. I'll see it for the first time like everybody else.
No, let's just I'm putting that energy out there because
Great, me too. That energy and hashtag freelance for more.
Freelance for more. Yeah, this is, guys, got to make this happen. Get online.
There is a play on words with freelance.
Freelance? Oh wow, freelance. This is good. You know what? You're hired as my new PR person. I feel like all right, great. I mean, you have the A24 movie as a reference on your resume now too, so you got the job.
Great! Look how mutually beneficial this is. This is excellent.
Exactly right. And look at us. But yeah, no. Like, I feel like that was a great way to say good reason to write a book, right? To not even for the audience, for yourself too, for yourself to be able to, I feel like in 20 years we'll be able to look back and be like, oh yeah, this is something I loved that I might have forgotten and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just keep that spirit alive, keep those things alive that, left.
Yeah.
Left, but in a good way. Left in a way that you got to like, no, not left in a good way. Sorry. I mean, memories that left, but left
Yeah,
in a
definitely.
good way. Yeah. What the, what's, I want to say what's next, but like what's next for your career as a writer? Like now you've written a book, you got like that under your belt. Your A24 is next year, Colin.
Right.
No, I mean, no, but like really, what's next? Are you gonna, is this like something that you now feel is a part of you, like the part of your personality as an author? And I know you wrote for UCB and you did a lot of writing there too, but like this is like now, self-reflection writing, real writing,
Yeah,
real personal life writing.
Yeah.
Sorry, UCB writers. I'm sorry, UCB writers, about that. Please don't hate me. Please don't go against the freelance movement.
Yeah, they appreciate the freelance movement, and I think I will continue to do it. I'm working with somebody right now to help write more of a like practical book, like a how to write a pilot book. So that is more academic or instructional, technical. It's scratching that itch though for me, and I want to keep doing it. It's I think I don't know. I got really lucky in that like I managed to preserve sort of the idea that like this was a project for me, and and I think back on this quote that I heard that was basically like it matters way more if 5 people love your work than if 100 people like it, which is a nice thing to repeat to yourself when your book is coming out, be like, I just got to get 5 people.
Just the 5.
Just 5. But it's true. It's like I got to write it for myself. That was always the intention. And I got to hear from people. I mean, I would have done this a long time ago had I known how many people from my childhood and my past would have like texted me to say like, hey, I picked up your book or whatever. And it was like, oh, I got to like reconnect with people. And for an introvert, it's easier to sit in my apartment for a year and write a book than it is to just pick up the phone and call someone. So
why would you? That makes no sense. Write a book, tell them what's going on in your life. You don't have to hear any. And the best thing about that is they don't have to like tell you anything about themselves. You're just like, here's me, goodbye.
Here's me, goodbye. Exactly.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
No, you said you got lucky, but it is, there's luck is a factor, but also it's a good book. Like it's a good story.
Thank you.
And the story is, it's very specific to your past, yourself, your personality, your all of these things. So that's a part of, I feel like, what makes a good book good. And since this is a book podcast, I have to say like books are good. Books are good.
Books are
good.
Oh, they're so good.
Books are good. Hashtag books are good. This is part
Hashtag
of the
books are good.
Hashtag books are good. No, this has been a great podcast. I've had a good time on this.
So have I.
I feel like I've learned, so much about you, so much about why you wrote this book. And I feel like listeners, you should go out and buy this book now. Go run, be one of those 5 people. One of those, basically what
there's a couple spots left. So
there's a couple spots left. This is a giveaway where you get the thing you get in return is a good story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Run to your closest bookstore and get a copy. No, this is the last thing I want to ask you is, what would you like to say to, listeners of the podcast right now and readers of the book and, friends and family, I'm guessing, who are affected by this book too?
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you to, it's hard for me to sort of, and it feels like a cop out for a writer to be like, I can't find the words, but I'm just like so grateful for anybody who took the time to pick it up or listen to this or check it out. It really does mean a ton. I can't tell you, because in truth, by the end of getting this book out there, I was like pretty tired of it. And so to
Like a
have
true
somebody, to have somebody say like, I appreciated this thing, felt really good. And it helped other people reading this book. I know, like, obviously you picking it up helps me, but maybe to express the way in which it helped is what I'd like to say, is that like, something that I've kind of like discovered post writing the book or whatever is, it was something that I did for me, which is really important, to do those things in your life, to do the things for you. And I always prioritize like also trying to have an impact. And so often I felt at odds with those things. Improv comedy feels like a very sort of selfish interest, and teaching special education on the flip side felt like a very selfless interest. And I was sort of constantly sort of struggling with the like finding those two things feeling like mutually exclusive, in that like you could do something for someone else and that would feel good in that sense, or you could do something for yourself and that would feel good in that sense. But when somebody picked up this book, a thing that I did for myself, and they enjoyed it, it did sort of like unlock this idea or this revelation that like both are possible, that you can be kind to yourself and do things for yourself and invest in yourself. And that doesn't take away from, and there are ways to do it in which it's also helpful to other people. And not that my book is like saving or changing lives, but just somebody who's like, I like this, it was a good use of my time, or I enjoyed it. And the flip side is true too, of like, there's so much to be gained for doing things for other people. And I 1000% wrote this book for myself, and I am I take no shame in that, and I'm very proud of being able to do that for myself. But I think I think both are possible, and I don't know that I articulated that in the best, but like, you can do things for yourself without them being selfish. If you try and keep other people in mind, and or do things for other people and see how that helps you. I guess that was a weird way to answer that question.
No, I think it was a good way to answer it, because I mean, like, you could do things for yourself. I feel like there is a truth in that for writers. Like, sometimes writers want to write for themselves. Sometimes the story they tell is so they can tell the story. And I mean, no, it's great that people connect to it, and people can, see it and say, this is something that I also dealt with, and I'm glad someone else did. But like, also it's good to be like, I wrote this because this is how I felt in the moment.
Perhaps the slight revision is like, write for yourself 1000%, but in doing that, you don't know who else you might be writing for. And I think maybe putting that front and center of like, write for yourself, create for yourself, and trust that if you do that, you might also be doing something for someone else, which is cool.
And also, wow, way to like really balance that that selfish, life, just like teaching special ed and then improv comedy. You really are finding the balance there.
Well, you're trying.
You'll end up in, I don't know, whatever middle ground is there between, like, one of my favorite shows is The Good Place, and I feel like it's that middle. You're going to be in that middle place for sure.
Yeah, the middle place.
Because you're doing this selfless thing, and then improv is straight to hell. You go straight down.
Straight to hell. Yeah, it is.
To hell. No stop.
Fast track.
Fast track. There's no middle ground there.
Yeah.
So
hell is full of improvisers.
I mean, Yeah, but you know, their heaven was on earth. You know what I mean? Their heaven was on earth, but their
Yeah.
afterlife is in hell. Again, used to be improvers. Don't come after me.
Yeah.
I'm really showing my hand here because you know exactly where I work and where to find me. Oh God, there's just gonna be a bunch of improvisers after me, which you know,
Good.
is,
They won't be after you, but they could go to the bookstore and pick up a book.
they can go. They can pick up a book. All I have to say is like yes and that'll distract them enough.
There
to
you
run
go.
away.
Yeah.
I'll escape.
That's all it
how
takes.
I'll escape. I'll be like, they'll come after me like yes and then just run away. Just run the other direction.
Give them a prompt. Buy yourself some time.
Be like, waitress on the moon, go. And just run away. No, this has been fun. This has been a great conversation. Like your book, I feel like we balanced humor and sadness very well. My therapist would be proud of me.
Oh, good. That's great.
But then I'd tell her everything else I'm doing in my life, and she'd be like, "Oh God, all right." Well,
yeah. Well,
she'll like, "See you next week." No, this has been so much fun.
Yeah, it really has. Thank you.
To our listeners, you could buy Jake's book right now. It's on sale at SKYLIT. It's actually right in the front in our podcast display. So please go pick up The Training to Be Myself right now. Run to SKYLIT. Go drive in your car. If there's improvers in the way, just, you know, run them over. Jump a curb if you have to. Yeah. Again, improvers, please don't come after me.
Yeah. They shouldn't be doing their space work in the middle of the street.
In the middle of the street. Yeah, that's true. It's their fault, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget to follow the freelance movement and to watch the A24 adaptation of this book next year.
We got a lot done today.
I feel good about it. Me
too.
I'm also gonna write that book with your the people you traveled with for your.
That's right. Oh yeah.
So
you got a lot ahead of you.
So you, Jake, you should check that out next year too.
I will. I can't wait. I'll pre-order all the copies.
Perfect. We need the sales. We'll need the sales. So thank you for that. For real, guys, go read this book. It's great. You'll feel so many great emotions and just have a fun time reading this this book. I think anyone who experienced both loss in a time of both happiness and sadness, they'll understand. But I was like, I also just got like, wow, I got one of those emotions where I'm like, this has been a good episode. This has been a great episode. Jake, do you have anything you would like to say to the independent bookstore community or just, you know, book readers and booksellers?
Keep reading. I think especially in these sort of like kind of like gray area times that we're in, I have found so much comfort in books. It has, and if you're a reader or part of the independent book scene, you already know that. But maybe give a book to someone. They're like, don't tell me what to do. But I just am so appreciative of books and the community and bookstores, and they really like helped me out immensely during this time.
No, and just thank you for going to your independent bookstore. I want you guys to know that Jake literally walked in and was like, oh my God, you were signing copies, right?
I was signing copies.
You were signing copies of the book. You were so excited to do it. I was like, come on our podcast.
Yeah.
And you were great doing it.
That was so excited.
No, this is anything to show off, you know, to help a local improver who's, you know, going to hell, but
right.
You know, give them their time.
Help me out.
No, this was a pleasure on our part. And yeah, to our wonderful listeners, thank you so much for coming back. Or if it's your first time, thank you so much for listening, and please come back again. You all have a great and beautiful rest of your day. Do something nice for yourself today. Thank you and have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylitbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.